Have you ever thought about what it would be like to build something super important, like without any tools?
Like with your mind.
Yeah, like something foundational to who
Right.
you are, but you don't need any like hammers or nails or
I
anything.
like that. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what we're diving into today, this idea of an inner temple.
Inner temple.
Yeah, it's from this fascinating lecture by Neville Goddard.
Oh, cool.
It was back in 1967, November 20th to be exact, and it's called Building Your Temple.
Okay. I like it already.
And so we're going to really dig into this idea of like, what is this inner temple? What did Neville mean by that? And how does this apply to like you and me and our understanding of our own inner world?
I think that's a great mission for this deep dive.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm excited.
Me too. And to get us started, Neville, he brings in this poem by William Blake,
Oh, wow.
The Four Zoas,
Okay.
and he kind of links it to that verse in Ephesians 6.1
Right.
that says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood.
I love that verse.
Yeah, and it's so powerful. And Blake, he saw this struggle as like this fall into division and this eventual return to unity,
Okay.
but not as like a physical conflict out in the world, but as something happening totally within our minds.
So it's mental then.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really interesting because it really sets the stage for understanding this inner temple as something we construct with our minds.
Yeah, and it's not just some like airy-fairy idea.
Right.
Neville ties it directly to the Bible.
Okay.
Specifically Ephesians 2.2122,
Okay.
where it talks about like this structure being joined together and growing into a holy temple with each of us as living stones.
I love that visual.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Love living stone.
And it really paints this picture of us like contributing to something sacred through our own inner building process.
Not a finished product, is it?
No, it's a process.
That's constantly evolving.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
And to really bring this concept to life, Neville shares this really interesting dream
Okay.
that a lady had. Now, it might sound a little strange at first, but just bear with me.
Okay.
So in the dream, she's like experiencing herself in 3 different ways.
Oh, wow.
First, as herself longing for this little green dog.
The green dog.
Yeah, like a bright green dog.
Yeah.
And then as another person, seeing this dog like shining like the sun.
Wow.
And then finally, as like a third person who delivers a message
Okay.
that the dog is hers and that her building is finished.
Oh, wow. So many layers.
Yeah. What do you think about like that triadic experience of the dreamer?
Well, it seems like the self is being shown in different facets.
Right.
It's not just a single viewpoint.
Right.
She's like embodying desire, right? With that longing for the green dog.
Yeah.
And then she's the observer, witnessing it.
Witnessing the dog shining.
Yeah. And then she's the communicator, too.
The messenger.
Delivering the message.
Yeah. And so this little green dog
Right.
that appears shining so brightly,
Uh-huh.
Neville, he identifies it with Caleb from the Bible.
Caleb.
Yeah. Do you remember Caleb?
Yeah. Wasn't he one of the spies with Joshua
That's right. Yeah.
who thought they could enter the promised land?
Yeah. They had the faith.
Yes. The faith.
So why do you think Neville makes that connection to Caleb?
Well, I think it has something to do with his unwavering faith and the courage to claim what's promised.
Yeah.
And the greenness of the dog.
Oh, yeah.
Neville says that it means pressing with sap, luscious health.
Oh, okay.
And, all of that just screams vitality and potential.
Yeah, it's like that fullness of life.
Yeah.
And then the dog shining like the sun.
Right.
That emphasizes like this radiant, almost divine quality.
Right. It's like it's glowing with something special.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
And the message in the dream is so direct, it says your building is finished.
Wow.
All you have to do is turn around to take it, and then poof, the little green dog disappears.
Oh, wow.
Why do you think it vanishes like right when she gets the message?
I think it's because she stepped into the promised land. That quality that Caleb represents, that's strong faith.
Yeah.
It served its purpose, to help her realize that her building was complete.
So the guide is no longer needed.
Right, once the destination is reached.
Then, exactly.
That's interesting. And so this leads Neville to talk about this Greek word hutu,
Okay.
which is often translated as he came to himself.
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, in stories like the prodigal son or Peter being released from prison.
Right.
But Neville points out that hutu can also mean he turned around.
Oh, interesting.
It is fulfilled. It
Yeah.
is finished to be married.
Wow, that opens up a whole other level.
Yeah, this idea of turning around seems so important.
It really is. And, these other translations, they give us a much richer understanding.
Yeah.
This turning around isn't like physically spinning around.
Right.
It's more like a shift in perspective, like suddenly realizing what you were seeking was within you all along.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and it is finished. That speaks to accomplishment.
And to be married,
Mm.
that hints at this profound inner union,
Yeah.
like a joining with your divine self.
So like when you feel lost and then you suddenly have that aha moment,
Exactly.
like the solution was within you all along.
Yeah, that's a kind of turning around.
Oh, that's good. So Blake talked about God falling into division,
Right.
and the lady's dream showed her divided into three.
Yeah.
How does that relate to this final turning around and realizing that you are he?
Well, I think the fall into division represents a state of fragmented awareness.
Okay.
Whether it's God in Blake's view or the dreamer's experience,
Yeah.
it's like being split apart.
Hmm.
And the journey then becomes about recognizing that fundamental unity underneath it all.
So the turning around is that moment when this fragmented perspective shifts.
Yeah,
And the individual sees their connection to the divine.
right, to the Father who's been building this inner temple all along.
And Neville's super clear that this temple isn't being built by some outside force.
Right.
He quotes, "He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." And he identifies that deeper self
Right.
as the one who started and will finish this work.
That's powerful.
Yeah, it is.
It's about recognizing the power within you,
Yeah.
even though it's rooted in the divine.
It's not about waiting for someone to come build it for you.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
power is within.
And he also talks about the fight mentioned in Ephesians and clarifies that these principalities and powers
Right.
aren't like demons or forces out there in the world,
Yeah.
but they reside in the mind.
Yeah. Unseen forces that constantly influence us.
Yeah, it's like this inner battleground.
Right. It's where the real work happens.
Yeah.
It's like, think of these principalities and powers as those negative thought patterns,
Yeah.
the limiting beliefs,
Yeah.
the emotional baggage we carry.
Right.
They feel so real,
They do.
even though they originate within us.
Right.
It's the spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. It's like the elevated realms of your own mind where these patterns live.
So then the lady in the dream, she comes to this realization that she only sends the message and that God is playing all the parts within individuals.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, it suggests this huge interconnection and a divine orchestration of our realities. If God's playing all the parts,
Yeah.
then every interaction, every experience
Yeah.
holds a deeper meaning.
Like it's reflecting parts of ourselves back to us.
Exactly.
And ultimately, Neville says that everyone brings their own living temple to the house of God,
Okay.
which is a spiritual temple not made of physical stuff.
Right, not bricks and mortar.
Yeah, and he even defines church as communion of the assemblage of the redeemed.
Wow, so it's not about a building at all.
No.
It's about the people.
Yeah, it's about a gathering of individuals who've gone through this inner transformation.
Right, an awakening
Yeah.
to their true divine nature. And the living temple that each person brings is their own evolved consciousness.
Right. Their realized potential.
And he brings it back to Caleb and Joshua,
Okay.
saying that as Joshua, which he equates with our own human imagination.
Our imagination.
Yeah, we're led into the promised land,
Right.
after which Caleb, representing that initial unwavering faith, disappears.
So once that state of fulfillment becomes our reality,
Yeah.
that striving faith integrates into something deeper,
Yeah.
a more natural knowing.
So then Neville shares a second dream.
Okay, another one.
Yeah, this one's about a man who embodies all desires.
Interesting.
There's an engagement and a promise to return.
Okay.
But he clarifies that it's not about like a worldly marriage,
No.
but it symbolizes the quote from Isaiah. Your maker is your husband, the Lord of hosts is his name.
So this dream is about union with the divine.
Right.
That man embodying all desires.
Yeah.
That's like the fullness of your potential. The unconditional love that created you.
And the promise to return is that eventual realization of this union.
Right, the marriage of your awareness with the divine.
It's like a homecoming.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Neville shares a personal experience
Oh, wow.
from 1952 in New York City.
Okay.
He had this deep longing for a direct experience of God.
Mm.
And he talks about how he ended up like living out the 42nd Psalm,
Wow.
leading this procession to the house of God.
And what happened?
Well, he describes this dialogue he had, and it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Like at one point, this voice says, Neville is God in the act of waking.
Wow.
And then it says, I laid myself down within you to sleep, and as I slept, I dreamed a dream.
Wow.
And then he had this intense feeling of the crucifixion entering him.
That's a huge turning point.
Yeah, it really sounds like it.
It sounds like a true awakening for him.
Yeah.
To his own divine nature.
Yeah, and his connection to the Christ consciousness.
That imagery of the crucifixion entering him,
Yeah.
that suggests like a deep empathetic identification with the sacrifice and the resurrection.
But experienced internally.
Yes, as a personal embodiment of the divine.
And then he goes on to explain Paul's breakdown of tenses in Romans regarding being united with Christ in death and resurrection.
Right.
He points out that the crucifixion is spoken of in the past tense because God chose us in Christ before the foundation of the world.
So it's already happened.
It's like it's a timeless reality.
Right, and we're all participating in it.
Yeah.
Your union with Christ in both death and resurrection.
Yeah.
It's a preordained truth.
Already accomplished.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he quotes, "No man takes my life. I lay it down myself. I have the power to lay it down and the power to lift it up again."
Emphasizing the self-giving nature of Christ.
Yeah, and that it wasn't forced, but a conscious act of love to identify with humanity.
Yeah, for our eventual awakening.
And the final outcome, as Neville describes it, is that when this inner temple is perfected, each individual will realize themselves as God the Father.
Wow.
But without losing their individual identity.
That's mind-blowing.
It really is.
It's like this paradox of unity and individuality.
Yeah, we're all part of the same divine source, but we retain our unique expression.
Right.
And the perfected temple symbolizes realizing this divine identity.
Yes, within your own consciousness.
Without losing yourself.
Exactly.
It's like becoming more you.
Yeah.
And then he brings it down to earth with this idea of revision.
Revision.
Yeah, encouraging us to change unwanted past experiences by reimagining them in our minds.
Interesting.
He uses this funny example of suddenly being a fry cook.
A fry cook.
Yeah, to highlight how temporary the external world is.
Right, our circumstances are always changing.
Yeah, and that the real work is internal.
Right, it's about reshaping our inner world.
Which then influences our outer experience.
I like that.
So what we're really talking about here is this inner spiritual temple that's constantly being built, shaped by our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions.
In an ongoing process.
It really is.
Where our inner landscape shapes our reality.
And this turning around, that moment of realizing.
That's key.
It seems so important for recognizing this finished temple.
Right.
And even more so for recognizing our true nature.
It's a shift in consciousness.
Yeah.
From identifying with limitations.
To seeing the potential within.
Yes, the divine within.
So as you've been listening to this, have you felt like you're building something intangible but real within yourself?
Yeah, have you thought about what materials you're using? Are they materials of fear and doubt?
Or love and possibility? And what amazing structure might be possible if you approach this inner building with intention?
With awareness of your own divine nature.
That's something to think about.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, this is great.